Hello, my name is Dr. Stacy Lopresti-Goodman. I'm a professor in the psychology department at Marymount University, and I'm the honors program director.
Hi, my name is Barbara Wallace. I am a recent honors program graduate of psychology and biology departments at Marymount University, and I currently study clinical psychology in Poland. So this is something I am personally interested in. I reached out to Dr. Stacy Lopresti-Goodman in 2019 to start this research on alternatives to animal dissection. Because I've just, as a double major and student of psychology and biology courses, I've noticed that a lot of students express varying attitudes to the dissection at school, and I just became interested in the topic, whether there are some alternatives offered so that they could reach and do something else instead. So this is just something we started working on in 2019. And then continued on into 2020.
And I'll mention also that this work was supported by a Marymount University Summer Discover Research Grant, which allows students and faculty to work together over the summer on projects. So this was the project that we worked on in the summer of 2019, like Barbara said, through 2020. And things have definitely changed in higher ed during that period. Mm-hmm. And so we reflect those changes in the poster as well. So according to a Pew Research study, a majority of Americans oppose animal research. And if you look at the details of who has the greatest opposition, we find that it's women and college-age students. Other researchers have found that a majority of psychology majors and psychology teachers oppose mandatory animal use in their classes. And other researchers have found that students, especially women, will be dissuaded from pursuing the sciences if they are forced to dissect. So we have all of this sitting in the background about why someone like Barbara and I might be interested in looking at alternatives. And then in 2020, COVID hit, right? And so we didn't even have the option to continue using dissection on Marymount campus, as I'm sure many other universities couldn't as well. So this need for finding not just ethical or humane or cost effective or educationally effective, but online alternatives to dissection became really important because we could not be together in the classroom. A 2020 study, it just came out and it was a meta-analysis. What they found is that humane alternatives provide equal to or superior educational experiences for students in the classrooms. And there's a number of reasons why alternatives provide the same, if not better, educational experience. Online dissections or these virtual dissections can be repeated. So if you're a student physically in the classroom and you're dissecting a fetal pig and you destroy an organ, you can't do that over without having a whole other specimen. Mm-hmm. Online, you can repeat the procedures if needed. These virtual programs have photos that are labeled, and maybe next to those labels, they're also going to have a concept or a definition of how that organ or that system works. And you don't have that also if you're working with a fixed specimen in the laboratory. Talking about fixed specimens, right? We have to worry about safety concerns. You have to wear gloves and there needs to be proper ventilation. That's not an issue with these virtual alternatives. As you'll see, a lot of these programs are free or they're much less expensive than actually doing dissection in person, and they can be done at home. You know, most students aren't going to order a fetal pig for their anatomy and physiology class and dissect it on their kitchen table. So there really are a lot of benefits about why we should be moving away from dissection or exploring these alternatives. And so the project that Barbara and I came up with was, well, let's look at what's happening at Marymount University, our own university. Like she said, she's a double bio and psych major, and this is where dissection happens. So we wanted to look at the use of dissection in these courses at Marymount, and then see if we could find a list of free or inexpensive alternatives that can teach the same content virtually or at home.
Yep. And just like Dr. LG said, I think is as much important to talk about the females being underrepresented in the STEM, because this has been a discussion for a while. And institutions like Marymount University specifically actually has 64% of female students. So we found that pretty important and applicable to this study. So what we did is we looked at all the syllabi from spring and fall semesters in 2018-2019 academic year. It took us over a year to scrutinize and analyze all the studies, all the labs, and what are these specifically doing, what dissections are taking place, and what types of specimens are being used. So yes, we looked specifically at Marymount University, which is a small private liberal arts college with a predominantly 68, actually, I'm sorry, I said 64 previously, 68% female representation. We also talked to chairs of biology and psychology departments to look at dissection costs, to summarize all the costs that school is actually spending on dissection. The IRB exempted the study from review. We conducted the literature review and internet search for alternatives, which Dr. Lopresti-Goodman will discuss in a second. But what is important, I think, is that Marymount University biology department offered no alternatives for students who would want to find such alternatives or who would not feel comfortable conducting the dissection. While psychology department offered online dissection to students who would not want to conduct the real dissection. And as you can see in the left bottom corner, the overall cost that Marymount University spent on dissection was over $8,600. And the most popular specimen types were cow's eye, sheep heart, fetal pig, sheep brain, spinal cord, and pig kidney. Yeah, and another important fact is that all students in biology department have to pay upwards $180 fee on top of their course credits with no alternatives offered.
And I just want to clarify quickly. For psychology, as Barbara said, an alternative was provided on the syllabus. It said you could do dissection or you can do this alternate assignment. And in biology, there's nothing written on the syllabi. There's nothing posted on the website about alternatives. So Barbara was correct in saying they don't provide alternatives. But if and only if a student is brave enough to say, I don't want to dissect, can I do something else? Then they will find an alternative assignment. But again, as you know, we talk about in the conclusions, there are power differentials in the classrooms. And it's really hard for a student oftentimes to speak up and say, I don't feel comfortable doing this. I don't want to do this, especially if they're not even told, you don't have to, there is an alternative. Okay, so based on these most popular forms of dissection that were happening at Marymount, we found a few online virtual alternatives. So there are a number of websites and programs that offer virtual brain dissections. So some of these are step-by-step photo guides where they show someone dissecting a sheep brain or a human brain. And as they dissect the brain, then they're going to talk about the different parts. And again, they'll have them labeled. There might be some information. There might be a little quiz as you move through the module. Other ones are programs where you can actually go in and you're like fake cutting and the parts of the brain are moving apart. But all of the guides that we have linked to here, and there are hyperlinks in the PDF guide, are free. So there's no cost to. And if we think about specifically in psychology, what are we trying to teach our students? We're trying to teach them about human brain anatomy and function. So having them interact with this virtual human brain as opposed to a sheep brain might even better help them understand these concepts that we're trying to teach, right? So there are a number of options that you can click to here, and there are quizzes embedded so they could take those as they go along. And if they don't understand something, they can go back and repeat it, take their time, and really spend the time that they need with that material as opposed to being, moved along in 1 hour. There are also some amazing programs that are virtual human anatomy labs. So some of these you do have to pay for. One of them, the cost is about $25 per student, but they can get this license and download something on their computer and have it for 2 years. And then there are other programs that the university can buy. And based upon how many students we have in a class at Marymount, if you think you need, 20 students in a class, and this cost is distributed over 4 years, it might come to $570 per class, but that's the cost for 4 years. So again, if you're looking at how much we spent in 1 year, $8,600 versus $570 per class, and you have that for 4 years, it's really much more cost effective. But these are these three-dimensional programs where you could go in and turn the human anatomy and rotate it, select an organ, it's going to bring that into focus. Again, it might dissect it, it's showing you these cross-sectional views that you see on the slides here. And again, if the point is to teach students about human anatomy, then why not use a human anatomy virtual guide? We don't dissect fetal pigs in psychology, but it's one of the most popular for biology. But there are also a number of free virtual fetal pig dissection programs online. And in addition to having step-by-step guides, they also have quizzes embedded. So students are getting feedback about, what do I know? What do I not know? What do I need to go back and revisit? And then lastly, like Barbara said, the cow eye is another really popular specimen that's dissected at Marymount. And again, there are a number of free programs that we have linked to here, which have virtual cow eye dissection.
Yes, so like Dr. LG said, I think one of the biggest benefits of those alternatives that we presented, especially those representing human dissection opportunities, are important because specifically for psychology students, they do not have to interact with animal specimens in their careers. And for biology, for biology majors, a lot of people who defend the idea of dissecting animals specifically and saying that it's a hands-on experience, we actually also should look at the statistics of how many people actually need specifically that information that they learn from interacting with a fetal pig, for example. I think much more students would actually benefit from interacting with the representation of human organs. So among the conclusions that we've listed here, like we've previously discussed, women are underrepresented in the sciences, and a university like Marymount, which has a predominantly female population, should definitely look into alternatives and offer alternatives to students so that females are not dissuaded from pursuing careers in STEM and biology specifically, or psychology even. And they won't be likely to change their career paths because of that negative experience. Marymount is predominantly female and has no dissection policy. So this is another point. So of course, and dissection is costly. All of these alternatives, I mean, most of these alternatives are free. There are some charges for upgrades and stuff, but the cost is definitely lower than what the university is currently spending on dissection. And due to the coronavirus situation, we should definitely look into alternatives as well, just simply because they're online opportunities and we don't know what innovative and modern alternatives will be useful for us. The situation showed that we might have been not completely prepared for that because we did not have this option in our syllabus. And so this is something this school and other schools should definitely consider.
And just one more thing too, I know at least our own university, I think being forced to go online made so many of us realize it's not that bad, right? And maybe this actually opens up many more possibilities for us to offer courses online. So even when the pandemic is over, which is hopefully soon, and we could be back in person, having these opportunities, which could be done online, it's going to be really helpful. I think, higher ed, the landscape is definitely changing, and it's going to become more common to have more online courses. So Barbara and I are thankful for you spending some time with us and
Thank
our
you so much.
poster. If you have any questions, we'll be available during the live poster session. You can ask us. And I think one more thing I'm going to add, it's not on our poster, but I'm going to try to preemptively answer this, is that there is some research, after a student dissects an animal, then a teacher might ask them their opinions on dissection. And so there are some studies that students say, yeah, it was valuable, or I appreciated it. But as psychologists, we also have to take into consideration cognitive dissonance, that if you aren't told there's an alternative, you're forced to dissect even though you didn't want to. And then afterwards you're asked about, what did you think about that experience? You may say, yeah, I thought it was beneficial, right? To try and eliminate some of that dissonance. So keep that in mind before you ask us your questions.
And I definitely think that this is a good place that we're in right now, because a lot of students were given a chance finally to see the alternative, and now they have an opportunity to maybe compare and contrast. And it would be probably useful to ask all these students now what they think and what would they choose in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Areas for future study. Thank you.
Thank you so much.